Friends, imagine a royal family, loved by their people, living in a palace. It sounds like a fairy tale, right? But what if I told you that one night this entire fairy tale was shattered? On June 1st, 2001, inside Nepal's Narayanhiti Palace, the king, the queen, and their children were murdered during a family dinner. The official story says the crown prince, Dipendra, did it, that he killed his entire family and then himself. A simple open and shut case. But is the truth ever that simple? Because when we examine the facts, the official story begins to crumble. We find impossible bullet wounds, key people missing, and a brother who just so happened to become the new king. So let's ask the question, what really happened that night? The answer is far more complex and far darker than the story we were sold. To understand the shock of this event, you first need to understand what the royal family meant to Nepal. For centuries, the Shah dynasty weren't just kings. They were considered living gods, incarnations of the Hindu god Vishnu. The ruler at the time, King Gyanendra, was especially popular. He was the one who had transitioned Nepal from an absolute monarchy to a constitutional one. He was seen as gentle and progressive. His son, Crown Prince Dipendra, was seen as the perfect heir, educated at Eton, handsome, and popular. For the people of Nepal, this family was a symbol of stability. But as we know, what happens behind palace walls is often very different from the public image. A major conflict was building, a conflict over love, duty, and rebellion. So what is the official story? The one that was quickly compiled by a two-man committee appointed by the new king, Gyanendra. Let's break it down. The narrative they presented is simple, a tragic love story. The crown prince, Dipendra, was in love with a woman named Devyani Rana. While she came from a powerful family, they were longtime rivals of the royals. More importantly, Dipendra's mother, Queen Aishwarya, was completely against the marriage, partly due to Devyani's family's political links with India. She had another bride chosen for her son. The pressure on Dipendra was immense. He was given an ultimatum: choose the woman he loved or choose the crown. Now let's come to the night of the massacre, June 1st, 2001. The royal family was at their usual Friday dinner. According to the official report, Dipendra was intoxicated, got into an argument, and was asked to leave. He went to his room, made 3 calls to Devyani, and then, dressed in army fatigues and armed with multiple guns like an MP5 and an M16, he returned. What happened next, according to eyewitnesses, was a systematic slaughter. He allegedly shot his father, King Gyanendra, first. Then for several minutes, he hunted down and shot 9 family members, including his own mother, brother, and sister. The official version concludes that after this rampage, Dipendra went to a small bridge and shot himself. In a final strange twist with his father dead, the comatose Dipendra was declared king. He died 3 days later, and his uncle Gyanendra, the brother who was conveniently absent, ascended to the throne. This was the story presented to a shocked and grieving nation. A lovesick prince, under the influence of drugs and alcohol, simply snapped. But millions of Nepalis didn't buy it. And when you look at the facts, you can see why. Let's analyze the serious loopholes in this official story. Point number 1. The survival of the new king's family. Gyanendra, the man who became the next king, was conveniently out of town in Pokhara. His wife Kamal and son Paras, however, were at the party. His wife was badly injured, but his son Paras, a man already disliked for his violent reputation, escaped with only minor injuries. Now ask yourself, in a small room where 10 people were massacred, how did the immediate family of the man with the most to gain manage to survive? Point number 2, the missing physical evidence. The official story is that Dipendra shot himself, but rumors immediately spread that the fatal wound was on the back of his head, a physical impossibility for a suicide. One journalist even claimed to have seen 2 bullet holes, not 1. How can a person shoot themselves in the head twice? Now, it's true these are unverified claims born from a lack of transparency, but they highlight the deep public distrust. Point number 3, the contradictory eyewitness accounts. Instead of clarifying things, survivor testimonies made the situation even more confusing. Some reportedly claimed they saw multiple attackers wearing masks that looked like Prince Dipendra. This directly feeds the theory that he was framed. There were even unsubstantiated claims from one of Dipendra's bodyguards, who reportedly accused Prince Paris of being behind the killings. Again, without credible evidence, these are just claims, but they show the chaos of that night and the belief that the truth was being hidden. And perhaps the most suspicious point of all, the handling of the investigation. The crime scene, the site of a royal assassination, was not preserved. It was cleaned up almost immediately. There were no public autopsies, no serious forensic investigation. The investigation itself was led by a committee handpicked by the main beneficiary, the new King Gyanendra. Their very first public statement claimed the massacre was an accidental discharge of an automatic weapon. A statement so absurd it destroyed their credibility from day one. The question is, why? Why the secrecy? Why the rush to close the darkest chapter in Nepal's modern history? When an official story has this many holes, a vacuum is created. And that vacuum gets filled with conspiracy theories. In Nepal, these weren't just whispers. They were shouted on the streets of Kathmandu. The most prominent theory is that this was not a family tragedy, but a well-planned palace coup, orchestrated by Gyanendra to seize the throne. The logic is simple. As the younger brother, the only way Gyanendra could become king was if Birendra and both his nephews, Dipendra and Nirajan, were gone. The massacre achieved this in a single night. Proponents of this theory point to his convenient absence from the party and his son's survival as undeniable proof. Gyanendra's later actions as king, when he seized absolute power in 2005, only fueled suspicions that he was a ruthless political operator. But there is another, more complex theory that looks beyond the palace walls, pointing towards foreign involvement. At this time, Nepal was in the middle of a brutal Maoist insurgency. King Birendra was known as a moderate, open to negotiations. Gyanendra, on the other hand, was a hardliner. In fact, top Maoist leaders like Prachanda publicly alleged that the massacre was the work of foreign intelligence agencies, like India's RAW or the American CIA. Why would they do this? The theory suggests they wanted to install a king who would crush the Maoists and align with their interests. King Birendra's popular and moderate stance was an obstacle. Now, to be clear, no concrete evidence has ever surfaced to prove this, but the complete lack of a transparent investigation created a breeding ground for these geopolitical theories, suggesting that even if Dipendra pulled a trigger, he may have been a pawn in a much larger game. Conclusion and CTA. Friends, more than 2 decades have passed, and the full truth of what happened inside the Narayanhiti Palace remains a mystery. The official story of a lovesick prince feels incomplete and unconvincing to most Nepali. The alternative, a ruthless palace coup by Gyanendra, seems to answer many questions, but lacks that definitive smoking gun proof. And the theories of foreign interference add a layer of geopolitical intrigue that remains speculative. What we know for sure is that this massacre marked the beginning of the end for the 240-year-old Shah dynasty. The deep public distrust in King Gyanendra fueled a massive pro-democracy movement, and by 2008, the monarchy was abolished. Nepal became a republic. The fairy tale was over. The gods had fallen. The nation was transformed forever. The central question remains, was Crown Prince Dipendra a perpetrator, a scapegoat, or merely a pawn? Was this a devastating family tragedy or a perfectly executed political assassination? The bullet-riddled walls of the palace remain silent, and the ghosts of that night have yet to reveal their secrets. Now I want to ask you, based on the facts, what do you think happened? Was it a troubled prince, a ruthless power grab, or something else entirely? Write your analysis in the comments below. And if you want to explore more such unsolved mysteries from history, be sure to subscribe.